Hi, Instagram. I hope you are having an amazing Sunday and just finished with an amazing weekend. I am so excited today to go live with Maayan Zik. It was by miracles that I found her and was so grateful that she was willing to go live with me without knowing who I am, and sharing her experience. Mayan. Okay, so I'm gonna have her join in on our video. And let's see.
Hi.
Yan,
Hi.
welcome.
Thank you
Well,
so much for having me.
thank you so much for being brave and courageous and getting on Instagram that we haven't met before, but I'm sure we will one day. And
Yes.
I loved the article that I read. I felt like there was so much to it, but before we even dive into the article, which was all about you, I want to introduce you and just where are you from and anything that you want to share with my audience today about like just who you are, where you live, how many kids you have in your family.
So I grew up in DC. The article discusses I was born in Alabama, but I didn't stay there long enough to capture an accent or anything of the sort. So I grew up in DC, came to school in New York City for college, and eventually met my husband. We have four children. My husband's Israeli, actually. Yeah, sometimes, and and he's from Tel Aviv. And yeah, so we have four beautiful children, Kanai and Hari, Pui Pui Pui, all that jazz. And two boys, two girls, ranging from like 10 to 5. I think about the older one first, then the younger one. Yeah, so that's a brief thing on me, I guess. I I started so like I say in the article, not every, like I feel like every person who has come to me and like they're like, what? You're Jewish? How could that be? Like, yeah, and they're like, oh, I know, you must have converted. That's the thing, and I get that from both sides, like the black people and Jewish people and everyone in between. But I just wanted to say, like, to emphasize, like, no, black Jewish people do exist from birth and that sort of thing. With all of that said, however, I grew up in a Christian household. I even went to a Catholic school because my mother thought it was the best school. Like compared, like these are the options: public school where you could possibly like get hurt and maimed in some manner, or the more safer option of Catholic school. So went to Catholic school. Um, and even though like even with all of that, like my grandmother would read to me like, well, I guess what you and me would call Torah, but for others maybe the Old Testament. She would read that to me all the time, and I'd always kind of internalize it as, oh, this is history, like these things happened, and sometimes she'd like, okay, and then off into the New Testament, and I'd be like, it's story time, okay. Like it wasn't real for me. I was just like, there are a lot of things that don't make sense here, but that's for another day. But in any case, like, and she would read to me like Tehillim and Psalms and things. So I had a lot of that growing up, and then later on, when I was a teenager, I found out that my so like through my mother, like my mother's mother's mother was rumored to be Jewish, and I was like, what? Okay. And like already I'd figured out like this, like I don't feel like, when you're a teenager, you go through a lot of things, hormonal, whatever. And at the time, I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I was like, there's just something not right here. Like I need to, and I think like I pinpointed it at the time, like I need better, like a better spiritual thing, something, like I need to go figure that out. Like I knew I was fine. Like I look fine. Like my mother would always tell me, like, never change anything about yourself because, there's God made someone exactly just for who you are, exactly as you are. So don't look into any or trying to tuck hair and nip there, nothing like that. She was like, no, God made you as you are, and He made you exactly for whoever is out there who likes you exactly as you are. And I always took that to heart, so I was kind of like, okay, so there's nothing physically wrong with me, but I feel a little off spiritually, so let's go investigate that. So I did that, and then finding out that my great-grandmother was potentially Jewish, I was like, I should definitely go check that out. So delving into it a lot more, I was like, yes, I totally agree with these things. This is for me. And so I felt more, and it was kind of loose here and there, kind of like every once in a while, like, oh, I read a thing and like whatever. But like in college, I felt more, because, like you're on your own, you're just kind of going around doing whatever you do, and no parent supervision, like whatever. Anyway, so I was kind of like, oh, I have more free time to explore this thing that I started for myself as in high school or like, like pre-intermediate school, high school type time. So yeah, so I started, funny enough, I started off thinking like, I'd read about all the different areas of Judaism. I was like, okay, there's Reform, and there's Conservative, and there's Modern Orthodox, and there's Ultra Orthodox. At least this is how the book termed it for, Hasidim and that sort of thing. And so I remember reading it and being like, I don't know if I could go for ultra orthodox. That seems a little bit extreme. I don't know about that. I'll try conservative. It's fine, like whatever. So I tried conservative, and then I'd found a synagogue in my neighborhood, and I started going there. And then later on, I was living in Manhattan, and then I moved to Brooklyn. And the place that I moved into had a picture of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and words in like Hebrew underneath the poster. So at the time I was teaching myself Hebrew and Yiddish or whatever because I wanted to try and understand it a little bit more. So I was like, I'm going to figure out this mystery. I'm going to figure out who this is, and like, okay, I'm going to find out. So I figured out it was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and also at the time it was like, well, I have to find a new shul to go to because you can't travel on Shabbos, and so I need something in the area. So I found out about 770 and about Chabad, and just like, I guess Hasidus and Tanya and all that sort of thing. I was like, oh wow, I really like this. It's the concentration of like for me, the focus, the thing that really stood out for me was the concentration on joy and using joy to like get through your obstacles and just like, whereas like there's this like on the other side of it, like this Christian idea of, or even Catholic idea of like, you're sinning, you're constantly sinning, and you need to pay for that, or some, like you always need to make it right somehow, like you're off the mark and you have to get back on the mark, that kind of thing. And so it's like a concentration of, at least in my head, I'm not speaking for anyone else, but for me it was like a concentration on negativity and just like always constantly thinking about, oh, I did this wrong and that wrong and the other thing wrong and how can I make it right? Whereas this approach for me was like, the Hasidic approach was like, oh, this concentration on joy and, oh, we're doing good things, we're doing positive things, this concentration of always like, do good, do a mitzvah, do this, do that, that kind of thing. So for me, that's what really got me into, I was like, oh yes, definitely. And so funny enough, and then I went to seminary, and then eventually met my husband and the whole thing. And he's a Baal Tshuva as well. Like he grew up traditionally and decided that, actually his story, just briefly, is he'd come to New York and he had given someone a deposit like ahead of time for an apartment or something, but at the last moment the person decided to scam him or something and took his money and the whole thing, and so he didn't have a place to stay. And these Lubavitchers were walking by and I guess figured out he was Israeli or something like that, and was like, hey, come with us, we'll fix you up, we'll get you an apartment, whatever, like, let's do it. And like, meanwhile, come for Shabbos, like the whole thing. And um, so in any case, one second. Um,
Hubby. Just
yeah, hubby. I'm
hubby.
on the phone, dear. I'll be right with you. But yeah, so in any case, like, so he got into Chabad from there. So I thought that was really cool and interesting. But in any case, um, hi, I'm live right now. Just, yeah.
The husband.
But yeah, so that's how I came to Chabad, and in a way, like, I didn't even think about it. Like, once I was in it, I wasn't even thinking like, this is far too much like responsibility and stuff to take care of. I was like, oh, this is totally for me, and I felt very at home in this atmosphere, and like really able, like, once. And like, once in this environment, I was able to really be fully myself, and to be able to talk to you, and to go out on and to help lead our march and be the MC for that, and introduce people, and like go out on the street and like start screaming not literally screaming my head off, but like a structured speech, if you will. But yeah, no, so. Yes. So,
Wow.
so that.
Thank you so much for that download. I'm just going to call that a download. Thank you so much for that download. I actually really admire you for leading a march. I don't know if everyone read the article, but Maayan led a march with the Crown Heights community, which I love how the article blended like and the tension that has been in the area with the Black community, and how almost like a way to bring peace and to start having that conversation and to blend the two communities. I thought that was amazing. Also amazing to recognize, wow, here's the point in time where I can make a difference, where I am needed, where my voice is important. For that, I just think that's special. And the fact that Vogue realized that, picked up on it, knew that this is so valuable, featured you on their website. I just feel like that was just the universe being like, we are so proud of you, Maayan. We are, and you do look very free. You look so happy and free and fully yourself. So really, like, kudos to you for following your heart, which in the article, it was very emotional for me to hear that when you first came to certain Chabad events, or maybe you at any Jewish event, that some people at that time would literally tell you to leave because the color of your skin. And the fact that you didn't walk away being like, I'm not even going to try again, but the fact that you had the courage to go back and continue. I want to hear if you can just tell me a little bit about that. Like, what made you not be like, I hate this? Like, if someone, if I would go through the same thing, I don't know if I would have the resilience to keep coming back for more.
Yeah.
What was the resilience? Find that.
So I remember, so like one of my first things, it was like a Hanukkah time, and this is like before I got into like wearing skirts and being sneas and whatever else. So I went and I was like, okay, like my standard of modesty at the time was like, okay, well, I'll wear wide leg pants or something. I'll put a hat on. I have my pea coat. Like, okay, fine. Like, it's winter time, so okay, that's covered. So in any case, so someone told me that there was a menorah, and in 770, like a really huge one, and they're like, you have to go see it. And I was like, okay, just and so like I figured out like where's the women's side, how to get in, like whatever. So I went in. I was still not aware of like the times that were proper to go to shul and not to shul and whatever else. I think it was like nighttime. I went and I was like, okay, like when I go into a place, I always like to look and get the lay of the land, that sort of thing. So I went and I was like, okay, oh, this is great. It was like dark off to one side, like the left, so I went to the right, and I'm like, okay, now I'm like trying to see like where's this menorah. So these two women saw me and they were like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Get out, and we're gonna call the police on you, and the whole thing. And I was like, what? I just came to see a menorah. I don't know why this is happening right now, but like I just came to see menorah. Like, could you just show me where the menorah is, and then like I'm happy to go or whatever. And they're like, no, what are you doing? Get out! You have to leave right now. And they like started running after me and calling people to call the police on me. And I've never had this happen to me before. Like in DC, it's in DC, people tolerate you for whatever. I mean, even if they have like racist inclinations, they're more likely to maybe keep it to themselves than express it in such an extreme manner. So I wasn't used to this particular behavior from people. I was very scared. It scared the bejesus out of me, but whatever. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, and so I started like running out of there because I didn't know what these women were going to do. I didn't know if they're going to hit me or what. So like start running out towards the door and they're even spitting after me. And I was like, I couldn't believe. I cried / ran all the way home. I told friends what happened. I was so upset about it. I didn't even know. So my friends, like Jewish friends, were like, "No, you have a right to be there too. You shouldn't take that. Like, no. You don't." And I'm like, I really want to go to shul, but like if that's how I'm going to be treated, I don't know. It's like very scary. So they're like, no. You belong there too, just as much as anyone else. You go back there and kind of like own your space, own your ground. And so I was like, okay, all right, I could do this. So another time I decided to go on like a Shabbos or something, still unaware of all of the times. So I think I went maybe after Ma'ariv was done or something like this. So maybe during the time people were going to meals and things. So I went this time in tights, like black tights, and a pencil skirt to the knees, and like I was like, maybe I wasn't sneezed enough or something, like maybe I wasn't modest enough. I noticed that everyone's wearing skirts, so like I'll wear a skirt too, again with the hat, the pea coat, whatever. So I go and I'm like, okay, people are davening. Whew, okay, no one's attacking me. This is great. So I went to sit down, to absorb, to like really take it all in. And then all of a sudden, like I had this like intuition. I turned to my right and behind me are the same two women from before. And we both look at each other like, not you again. So, but this time, like my friends had coached me. I was like, yes, I'm standing my ground, or rather sitting my ground. And so I sat on, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to ignore them. I'm not going to let them get to me this time. Like, I have a right to be here too. And like giving myself like little mantras to say to myself, like, self-affirmations like, yes, you belong here too, it's fine. And the seats there, they lift for Amidah, and so they're trying now to lift the seat with me on it. So they're on either side, trying to lift me out of the seat physically, and all these women who are davening are just sitting by and not saying anything because they don't know what's going to happen. Maybe it's a little bit of fear. I don't know. Like, they don't know what's going on with the situation, so they're just sitting and watching. But nobody stands up for me or like comes to my rescue to tell them rather, what you're doing is wrong. You shouldn't be harassing a person like this or anything of the sort. So I eventually I say to myself, like, okay, you know what? I don't want to cause any more ruckus to, in a way my presence disturbs everyone else's davening. I don't want to be a disruption to davening, so I will make the decision to leave myself. So I got up and I told them, look, like by this time, this woman is now like calling out in Hebrew or something down to the men's section, like go call the police. There's some black person here or whatever it was, and the men are looking up at the women's section like, what's going on up there? Okay, crazy times in the women's section. But in any case, I got up and like said, I am making a decision to leave right now because I don't want to be a disruption to everyone else. But I have a right to be here too. So that's that. So I got up and I walked with like measured steps towards the door, like not in a rushed way, but like at a calm, like, okay, but also like, gotta get away from these women. Okay. So then again, with that kind of thing in mind of like, I belong there too, because look, like, despite their behavior towards me, Judaism isn't about that. That's not where Judaism lies. It doesn't direct our people to be violent towards other people, to harass them in this way. That's not what Judaism is about. So, and I knew that. So I was like, you know what? That's why I kept trying. So, I was like, okay, I'll talk to my neighbor. And so I was like, okay, neighbor, these things have been happening to me. Would you please take me to shul? And she was like, yes, I'd love to. I'll do it. And so she took me to shul, and she introduced me to people, and that was really good. So then eventually, going to seminary, some of the girls there were like, oh, hey, let's go to 770. And I was a little bit like traumatized by the 770 experience by this time. I wasn't against going to shul. I'd find other shuls to go to. But at the same time, it was like, no, if we should do that. They're like, no, there's a more quiet side on the Kingston Avenue side. There's an Eastern Parkway side, and then there's like a Kingston Avenue side. So in any case, they're like, okay, let's try it. I'm like, okay, fine. If you say Kingston Avenue is supposed to be peaceful, I'll go with you. So I went. And again, here's this woman who's been harassing me all these other times, and she comes and she's like, you again? What? You need to get out of here because the Rebbe doesn't want you here. He doesn't like people like you, and you need to get out of here right now. And so at this point, I'm just like, maybe this woman is just not, like, maybe she's just not with it. I don't know. Like, I'm just going to ignore her. I'm just going to go about my own business and just ignore her and, like, whatever. And my friend stands up for me and says, and goes to the woman and stands up to her and says, no, you get out of here. The Rebbe loved everyone. And if anything, the Rebbe would be very disappointed with your behavior. If anything, it's you who should leave, not her. So you should go leave. And so she stood up for me, and I had never had anyone stand up for me like that before, and I was just moved to tears, and that was just amazing. So just so for instance, when people talk about allyship right now and being really like being a friend for the Jewish people, like not the Jewish, for the Black community and that sort of thing, I think about that moment with my friend who stood up to that lady, like, instead of just sitting there and like going, well, whatever, this is not my problem. I have to go daven now. She made it her responsibility as well to take care of that situation and to take care of me in that moment, emotionally, spiritually, physically, etc. And I was very grateful and very happy for that moment. So yeah, so a lot of things like that. And then other things just kind of like going to a new shul. Like my husband would sometimes be like, hey, let's try a new place. And I'd be like, I don't know about that, because it's like every place you walk into, or at least every place that I would walk into at the time, it would be like, who are you? What are you doing here? What's going on? Where do you hail from? Who are you from? Like, who do you know? How's it going? And the whole thing. So it was like a whole, like the nth degree thing. I'm like, I just found a shul where I'd gone through the whole process. I've gone through the process already. I don't want to go through the process again. And so he'd have to assure me that, no one's going to bother you. No one's going to No one's going to question you. They'll accept you as you are, and that sort of thing. So since all of that, I've found different shuls that have accepted me as I am, and I don't have to worry about nth degree business and whatever else. So yeah.
Wow. Whoa. I don't know. Like that was a very personal journey. I got teary-eyed and felt for you. And I want to ask you my first curious question, and I'm sure some people in the audience have questions at the edge of their seat. So if anyone has questions, feel free to ask. And I also loved Noah's comment. She said, I asked about how you didn't just run away from Judaism, from all that the racism, and she wrote, you have a Jewish neshama, and I,
Oh, yeah.
you know, Jewish neshama, you cannot get away. You're going to be magnetized. Um, but I want to ask you how long ago this was, and has it gotten better since? And in terms of the Jewish community and racism, are we in the right direction? Or is it rampant? Is it like, what is your perspective on the now, 2020?
So this was in like my experiences with those particular women happened like let's say 2005, 2006 about. Um, I have had other like into say 2008, 2009, like in 2008 when I was married. Like anyone else, I'd put my wedding pictures on Facebook, and so apparently someone who was a friend of someone, like a friend of a friend, decided to take one of my pictures and put it on their blog and make some comment like you don't see a couple like this in 770 all the time because my husband of course would kind of come off as I guess white and I'm black, so it's kind of like a biracial relationship. So we were very stressed out about that. We're like, really, just like a day out of the marriage blocks, here we are, faced with this. So I decided not to put any pictures. I took all the pictures of our wedding down, or like pictures with like both of us in it, or just to kind of like keep comments, like to, because I don't think at the time I was really emotionally ready to deal with people criticizing our relationship like that. And then like later on when I was pregnant with our first child, like people would come up to me and ask me, well, do you know if it's going to be do you know if your baby's going to be black or white? And I'd be like, um, so I don't have X-ray vision, and even if I did, X-rays don't see colors, so I got nothing for you. And even another woman after my son was born, it came up to me in the store, and I had my son in a carrier, and he had his little hoodie on. And she came and like grabbed the hood away like this, and was like, and I was like, what are you doing? And she was like, I just wanted to see if he was black or white. And I was just like, what? No, 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 no. I was like, well, all you need to know is that he's Jewish, and that's it, okay? So leave me be. That's it. That's all you need to know. Goodbye. And so it's just like I said in the article, it's like all of these things. Like if I had to deal with them on my own, it's one thing. I'd kind of try to ignore it. I'd go about my business. I'd try to live life as whatever. But now I have to deal with it for my children, and I don't. I hope that the world would be better for them. I think it's getting better. I think it's improved since I began my Crown Heights part of my journey. But I still think that some people have a ways to go, and um, like other things, like my children, like I don't think that children should really have to worry about, the color of their skin or how that impacts them. Like I shouldn't have to like I said, like there shouldn't be a certain stereotype or generalization that comes with the package of like, oh, she has brown skin. Like we immediately think download all that information. Brown skin people, all the various generalizations that a person might have about that. Like no, with any other person, you would get to know them because you don't know them yet. So you would go and you would talk to them, and maybe in that circumstance of a person trying to get to know you, fine, ask questions, but like in a more normal paced conversation way, not like a million questions at once, but like a general dialogue, slowly getting to know a person, that kind of thing. So I was just yeah, so I don't think that anyone should, like, my children think about their skin a lot. Like, they think about, like, am I brown? Am I white like Abba? Am I not exactly that? Am I orange? Orange has been a thing, apparently, in their psyche. It kind of distresses me that they have to even think about this. And I'm pretty sure that not every child is thinking about uh, their skin. Like, I don't think that other quote unquote white children or other Jewish, like European children are worried about, am I pale? Am I peachy? Am I too pink today? Like, they're not thinking about those things. They just carry on with life as they are, and they go, and their merits and their personality shows up for them, and that's who they are. That's what I would like for my own children and myself. I don't want to go into a room and have immediately someone think, well, she must be like this. She must be like, she must have gone to public school. She must be like a ghetto person. And like, I don't know, like all these weird things. Like, even in a different situation that had nothing to do with like Jewishness or anything, like just a regular like white woman, non-Jewish white woman, I was on a job or something, and she asked me, like, she's like, do you mind if I ask you a question? Because, like, she'd gotten into talking about her child, and I was like, oh, I have 4 kids of my own, and that whole thing. And she was like, she's like, do you mind if I ask you a question? So, like, when that happens, it's like, okay, what are we walking into here? But in any case, so she asked me, so does each of your children have a different baby's daddy? And I was like, what? And I couldn't understand why she would even think this, because I was like, it was the middle of summer. I'm dressed in all black with like the neckline up to here, the, 3/4 sleeves, the leggings and skirt down to like the knees, the whole thing. Like, I don't think that I give off give off the perspective of being a woman who has multiple babies' daddies or something. So I was like, no, I'm like, my children all belong to one father of whom I'm still married to, like the whole thing or whatever. And she was like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. My mother had like 5 kids on her side, and my father had like 9, so I guess that makes sense. And then later on, she asks me about public school, as if I would just know offhand about public school. She's like, I'm sending my son to public school. I don't know how it's going to be. What's been your experience with public school? And I was like, I don't know about public school because I've gone to private school my whole entire life, and so I would know nothing about that. But perhaps it would be best if you would just go to the other parents in your neighborhood, because I suspect that all public schools are different from each other. So perhaps going to the parents that are already in your neighborhood who send their children there would be a better educational bet for you and figuring out what that school will be like for your son. So like things like that, like this kind of like package of like, oh wow, I didn't expect her to be so smart. Wow. Like things like that, like where people kind of like say these things out loud, and I'm like, okay. But no, but it's like initially, like my son had been going to one school where, like he'd been called a goy or a schwarza, or if he wasn't called this thing and considered Jewish himself, if I would come to pick him up, they would consider me to be like the goy, or, oh, is that your babysitter? And other things like that. And then if they thought of me as a goy and he was like, well, that's my mom, then they'd be like, are you Jewish? Are you a goy too? Like, what's going on? And I mean, I've heard of other instances where people who do look European and they're Jewish, like, go through this thing of, like, people think that they look sort of like an outsider, so they question them too. But I've had it happen a lot I think it happens a lot more with me because it's more like, it's more obvious. It's like, oh, she doesn't look like us. Exactly. So there's that. So I'd since moved him like to different schools that were more accepting. Like they didn't make color like the focus of what was going on with him. And also the kids that were also in that school had parents who did not make color the focus of their finding a friend for their kid or something like that. It wasn't. So I'm happy with the schools that I put him in eventually. So I think from that perspective it's getting better. Like, even I don't think a lot of Lubavitcher schools will teach this, but there are some, like the ones that I'd sent my children to talked about Martin Luther King Day and the like
Wow.
the nuances of all of that and why it matters and things like that. So I think we are moving in a good direction. I don't and I also surround my like and if it does exist, like I know it definitely does exist. Like, for instance, I also get mixed up with other Jews of color. So like lots of people will start conversations with me, and I'm one of those people who are just like, I'll talk to you like now. I'll talk to you like we've known each other since forever. Like, it's totally fine, you know. I even had a friend, like I did it so much in college that my roommate was like, "Did you even know that person? Did your mother never tell you like stop talking to strangers? Like, what's that all about?" So in any case, yeah, so in terms of like, so people will call me by this other girl's name and I'll just be like, oh, by the way, hi, I'm Maayan. Nice to meet you. And your name and that whole thing, and I'll do it at the end, but I'll try not to like I try to do it in the least embarrassing way possible. But yeah, no, stuff like that happens. But I think, I mean, I've surrounded myself with really good people and seeked out like the people who aren't going to, like, I haven't put myself into a community of people who are going to be racist against me like constantly all the time. So it's really good that there are good people in Crown Heights, and I think we are moving in a good direction. And yeah,
Okay.
it, no, ask me more questions. I'm talking too much.
First of all, you have an amazing smile, and I love to hear you speak. You're definitely a leader, so definitely speak your heart out. I have a question that came up for me. Um, so, in terms of your children and feeling comfortable in their own skin, which, yeah, I- that in and of itself talks and teaches me a lot about white privilege and what we don't go through. Um,
Mhm.
what do you encourage, or what do you say to your child to recognize the beauty in being Black and the pride and everything that you want them to have in terms of self-love? What is your approach?
Um, I definitely, I, in terms of like, especially recently now with everything that I've been doing regarding like the Talucha for social justice and getting involved with Caravelt and doing things like that, I have been, and if anything comes up in the news, I discuss it with them. I talk to them about what's going on, and and that sort of thing. I'm always telling them that they're beautiful. They shouldn't let anyone tell them otherwise. And if such a person is telling them otherwise, they should maybe reconsider their friendship or how they engage with that person. Um, I but I really try to emphasize lots of like, you are beautiful as you are. You are, inside and out. beautiful person, make sure that you have manners, make sure that you're polite, make sure that you do mitzvot, that you're doing good things out in the world, and really just the emphasis on having this, like really trying to build up their self-esteem, because I know, I mean, I have no idea what the teenage years will bring them and how they might deal with it or whatever. But for me, it was a pretty emotional, traumatic time in my life. So I really want to try and boost them and like build them up as much as possible so that when they get to this place in, if they get to that place, Khosrow, of like of being uberly hormonal and like whatever else might be going on with them emotionally, spiritually, whatever, that they have this voice in the back of their head saying, you know, I am really beautiful. Like, I've been told that I'm really beautiful and that I'm very kind and that I'm very polite and I'm a good person. And, like, they have those things already kind of like brewing in the back of their head that can really counteract any negative voices that may pop up for them in those times and help them through the way, at least as much as possible. Yeah.
You're
I
such a good.
remember. Oh, by the way, like this other story. So there was a boy in my son's class, and they were doing some kind of like circle thing with holding hands or whatever. So another boy in the class said, "Well, my mom doesn't allow me to hold the hands of like of black people, red people, or yellow people, or something like that." And so the teacher was just like, "Oh, wow, what are we? Okay, no, sweetie, this is the assignment. We have to hold each other's hands. That doesn't, that's not, we just had a whole thing about Martin Luther King. Like, what did we not understand about that?" But in any case, so my son says to him with a smile and just goes, "Well, look, I'm not black, red, or yellow. I'm like orange or something. So you're good." He's like, you're safe, you're good. Like, just, so let's hold hands. It's going to be fine. And I thought, wow, he handled it so beautifully. He wasn't stressed out by it. It was just like just another day, like whatever, la 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 la, that kind of thing. And I thought, wow, that's so nice of, like, really awesome of him, and he handled it so beautifully. Yeah, yeah.
And how
So how old was he at the time? He was probably like 6 or 7 or something at the time when this happened, and I was just blown away. I was like, that is the best response that anyone could have. Yeah.
that's amazing. That is amazing. Wow. That I don't. It makes me. I'm so happy that you're here sharing these stories. I think that this is so important, and I was where, I mean, I was ignorant. I'm not intentionally, but just the way I was conditioned to recognize that this is a reality that people live with, that I'm not hearing about and understand. And so it's like, I feel like as I get to learn more, it's just always so heart provoking for me, because it's just, how did, you know, how did we allow this to go on? Or how, or the mothers of these children, are they not like, maybe his mom did say something like that, like, you can't hold a hand of someone who's black, red, or yellow, or like, what parent would tell the child that? It's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the end, like the school talked to her about it, and she wasn't, so she said, like, no, he didn't get that from me. I don't know where he got that from. And she seemed cool with me, like in our interactions and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like a weird thing, like, where did that come from? I don't know. It's like where do children pick up things from, like, and children can pick it up from a whole lot of places and just kind of like attribute it to here, there, and everywhere and go, yeah, I learned this at home. Yep, definitely. Yep, yep, yep. So there was that. I mean, she did try to save face and like let's try and have better interactions with our children. And like she wanted to do play dates together and maybe like get him used to, like a more diverse set of friends, and so it's not just okay, like not just like, oh, he go, I only have like European or like white friends or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So your grandmother read the Old Testament song to you. This is your mother's mother.
Mm-hmm.
She comes from the direct line of possible lineage to being Jewish. Wow,
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. I love that. Yes. No, I mean, I haven't, because in my head, I'm also like, oh, wait, so is her mother, like, I guess where I go with it is like, well, is her mother also Jewish? And there's not a lot known about my great grandmother's mother. I tried asking like another sibling of hers, and she was like, I don't know. She was like very to herself, and also like to the point that they didn't even know her birthday. And they lived in the country, and like my mother, they're from Jamaica, my mom's side of the family.
Mhm.
And but her name was Lila Abrams. I mean, that's a very Jewish name. So she was, yeah, so my mom was saying like, in that time, it's kind of like good luck if you made it to the city with your documents and actually registered, whoever was supposed to be registered. It'd be like how many hours? I think it's like an all day, like, or half a day trip or something to get from like the main city to like Kingston, like where all the municipalities are, from like the middle of the country. So it's kind of like if you were in the middle of that trip, it's like, oops, forgot the papers, but we're not turning back. Just keep going, like, have things to do. So
Yeah.
yeah, things like that. But yeah, it's interesting. I want to investigate that further. But I'm happy as I am, like just being. So I did the whole conversion process and the whole thing. So I'm happy with that for the time being. But yeah.
How does your family respond to your conversion and orthodoxy?
So my family is very like, okay, yeah. Um, I think yeah, there you are. Yeah, no, they're totally fine with it. They're very accepting and loving about the whole thing. They're just, because I mean, it's not like, she's not even that sibling that I talked to about, like the sibling of my great grandmother. She had married a Jewish man as well, and there are others in the family who had married other Jewish people and that sort of thing. So it wasn't uncommon to have like Jewish people in our family. So for me to take it on myself, they were like, okay.
Cool.
And we weren't really like, I say that I grew up Christian or whatever, that really it was more influenced by being in a Catholic school. Like my mother never went to church, and the few times that she did, it was like I don't know, just like really weird, odd experiences of like I remember one time I was sitting in the front and I'd like paid no attention to the guy preaching or whatever, and I had my back to him even, and I was like in a chair. I was like 4 or 5 or something, and I was in a chair. Okay. I was in a chair, just like coloring a page or something, and I was talking to my sister, like, hey, da 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 da, like whatever, and I was getting like really loud about the whole thing apparently, to the point where he was like, excuse me, you need to take your children and go to the back because like they can't be speaking like this. Or like, I think at one point in time I may have been just like hanging out on the stage, like coloring, like it wasn't a big deal or something. He's like, what is this kid doing here? And other things like that, where it was just kind of like doing Sunday school. And like I think my grandmother, my mom didn't really go for this, but my grandmother would attempt to put my sister and I in Sunday school, and my sister and I would just be, I don't know what my sister felt, but at the time I think we felt it was like both kind of awkward and just like no one's really paying attention to us right now, and all about, and the whole thing. So I think even then it still felt like a weird fit. It was just kind of like, I'm just doing it because other people have put me in this place. But if I had to choose it myself, I wouldn't do it myself. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Your neshama. Chaya Shira joined. Hi, Chaya Shira. Maayan was just telling us how she was put into a Christian private school, but her neshama always felt connected to Judaism. So she wasn't connecting with the preacher and she wasn't connecting with the classes. So they would
And
send her to the back.
yeah.
So just filling her in on that.
Apparently, I was being rude or something by coloring on the stage. Do.
Yeah, being booed for coloring on the stage. I love your energy. I just think it's fascinating. I think it's more of what the world needs. And I want to know what are some of your next steps because I feel that you've done so much already for your community and you're taking it. And I felt like the Vogue feature was just that confirmation. You go, girl, you're in alignment. Just keep
Yeah.
going. Keep going. What are your next steps for the Jewish community or the world at whole?
Ooh, world domination. No, sorry. Just like picking up the brain. Anyway, sorry. Any Hoosers. So our group. So it wasn't just me who made the march happen. It was a group of us, a group of progressive Chabadniks in Crown Heights, and also outside of Crown Heights, who decided. One of our friends, Miriam Levy-Khan, she said, she was like, I really want to go to, I want to do a protest, but like, I don't know where, how, whatever. And so we're all kind of like fleshing it out on our WhatsApp group. And then she was like, hey, what if we did something ourselves on a Sunday? Like, because there wasn't anything that we really could like go through or that was already organized. So she was like, what if we just organized our own thing? And we were all like, yes, let's do this. And so I think this was like a Thursday or something that we were all like, yes, let's do this. And I said, like, even if we don't have speakers or anything, I think it's enough for us to go out and speak our own truths about all of this and how we feel about, social justice and how we want to, connect with our fellow Black community and connect with the Black community in Crown Heights and just go from there. And then like Motzi Shabbos, we had like she'd put out like a few like reach like put out a few feelers here and there, like, do you know if anyone could speak? Da 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 da. We made a flyer before Shabbos, put the flyer out, and we just committed to it, and that was it. And like Motzi Shabbos, we had speakers, and we were like, oh my goodness, so many speakers. This is amazing. Yes. So I volunteered to be the MC and introduce people, make a little introductory speech, and did that. And so then after that, people were, we thought it would just be like, say, 50 of us or something, like 30 to 50 of us, like a small group of us, like that whole thing. But but when we got there, it's like hundreds of people, and we were just blown away. I was just like, wow. And I had never spoken in front of people like this before. Like, it's one thing to go into say, a hall or something and speak to a set number of people like that. But it's another thing to be like just out on the street with the megaphone or a microphone or whatever, and just like, hello everybody, let's do this, And I'd never done that, so I was like, and I didn't memorize anything. So yeah, so that was great. So after that, we got lots of press. The Vogue contacted me as well, and Liana Satenstein, and she was, and we just had all these interviews, and they kept asking us, well, what's next? What's next? Like, we want more, and we definitely wanted more, wanted to do more.
You could invite the baby. You can invite the children. I love children. Come on in, kids.
Oh my God, they scream in the background, and I'm not always like that. So in any case, so we decided to call ourselves Caravelt, and it's Yiddish for turn the world over. It's something that the Rebbe said about, if you knew that you could have like the base of Mikdash, like, or if you could prevent it from burning down, then you would make sure to like turn the world over to prevent that from happening. And even more so, like if you wanted, like, to have Mashiach now and that sort of thing, that you would make sure to turn the world over to make that happen, like a more peaceful and just place in the world. So we decided to call ourselves this. So we're Caravelt, and we've done different things. We've been in the Washington Post. We've been in Business Insider, Jewish Week, The Forward.
Wow.
And one of our colleagues was interviewed actually on Khan Channel 11, Khan TV, like on Israeli TV by Moab. So he was there as well. So lots of things like that. So we're trying to do more things. Like we're having a Zoom event on Monday where me and actually you've met Yafi. Yafi and I are going to have a Zoom event on Monday evening and talk to our community about being a frum Black Jewish person, and share that and help, because lots of people want to know, like, how do I, we've been getting lots of questions like, do you know of any Jewish books that have like more diverse characters in them, and that sort of thing. So we're also working on building a list of more diverse Jewish materials and that sort of thing. We might even look into figuring out toys, like more diverse Jewish toys. And maybe even writing a few books of our own and trying to get them published as well. So that's all in there, as well as, just other things, like things that, help to connect with the Black community and help to educate our community about racism and how we can be anti-racist, and how we can diversify our homes so that we develop children who aren't going to be racist in the coming generations, that we can build a better future for all of our children, not just for Black Jewish people, but for everyone. So yeah, so that's what we're up to, and just collaborating as much as possible, just seeing what's there, how we can help, how we can make more peace and justice in the world. So, still, that's what we're up to. Yeah.
I love it, and I support you all the way. And where can we find Caravelt? Is that we follow you on Instagram, or is there an Instagram for Caravelt? Or
yeah, so we're at Caravelt. So it's KER underscore, like the underscore thing, not the dash score. A_VELT. I think I can.
Cool. Yeah, you can type that in, so that we can, everyone, I really recommend following Maayan Zik and following her project, supporting it, spreading the word to the Velts, to the world.
Yeah.
And I love that you're home in Chabad. I think, and I love that hundreds of people came out to your march, because I think that that shows, that shows the community's interest in learning. That shows the community interest in understanding and in hearing your stories. And I just kudos. Everybody loves Chabad. We need Chabad in the world. We need Chabad in all the corners of the world. But I just think that that's such an amazing, just that you have that. I think that's amazing. We have 1 minute and 30 seconds left. So anybody has any questions, ask now. Maayan, you are amazing. You are beautiful. You are just extraordinary. And by the way, can we just talk about your name for a second? Maayan Zik. Is it just me? I just feel like that name is famous. Now it just rings perfectly. It rings perfectly.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing your time and your personality with us. And I hear your children in the background, and I have children too, so go take care of them.
How many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids, aged 11, 10, and 8.
Very nice, very nice. Boys, girls?
2 girls and 1 boy, and they're pretty independent. So I'm like in a really good stage. It's just like I finally got to that stage that I could breathe. There are no diapers. I don't even need a babysitter anymore. My life just like upgraded.
Yeah, my kids are 10, 9, 7, and 5. And so the
Wow.
first 2 are boys and the last 2 are girls.
That's
Yeah.
so
So
even.
very balanced, very nice. Yes.
You have a balance. All right, for the 20 seconds remaining, I love you. Thank you
Thank
so much for sharing your heart with us. You've taught me so much, and I cried and laughed with you, and I appreciate your time and blessings. Love you, girl. Love
thank you
you.
so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.